The Indian Air Force is the air arm of the Indian Armed Forces. It is the world's fourth largest air force. Its primary responsibility is to secure Indian airspace and to conduct aerial warfare during a conflict. It was officially established on 8 October 1932 as an auxiliary air force of the British Empire, and the prefix Royal was added in 1945 in recognition of its services during World War II. After India became independent from the United Kingdom in 1947, the Royal Indian Air Force served the Dominion of India, with the prefix being dropped when India became a republic in 1950. Since independence, the IAF has been involved in 4 wars with neighboring Pakistan and 1 with the People's Republic of China. Other major operations undertaken by the IAF include Operation Vijay, Operation Meghdoot, Operation Cactus and Operation Pumalai. Apart from conflicts, the IAF has been an active participant in United Nations peacekeeping missions. The President of India serves as Supreme Commander of the IAF. The Chief of Air Staff, an Air Chief Marshal, is a 4-star officer and commands the Air Force. There is never more than 1 serving ACM at any given time in the IAF. The rank of Marshal of the Air Force has been conferred once, to Arjun Singh, by the President of India on 26 January 2002, and he became first 5-star rank-holding officer of IAF and AMP, serves as the ceremonial chief. Mission. The IAF's mission is defined by the Armed Forces Act of 1947, Constitution of India and the Air Force Act of 1950. In the aerial battle space as defensive India and every part thereof, including preparation for defense and all such acts as may be conducive in times of war to its prosecution, and after its termination to effective demobilization. Thus, the IAF has the primary objective of safeguarding Indian territory and national interests from all threats in conjunction with the other branches of the armed forces by defending Indian airspace. The IAF provides close air support to the Indian Army troops in the battlefield and also provides strategic and tactical airlift capabilities. IAF also provides infantry and artillery transportations as secondary airlift for the Indian Army. The IAF also operates the Integrated Space Cell together with the other 2 branches of the Indian Armed Forces, the Civilian Department of Space and the Indian Space Research Organization, to utilize more effectively the country's space-based assets for military purposes and to look into threats to these assets. The Indian Air Force, along with the other branches of the Indian Armed Forces, provide assistance in disaster relief such as during natural calamities by undertaking evacuation, search and rescue operations and airdropping relief supplies in affected areas. The IAF provided extensive assistance to relief operations during natural calamities such as the Gujarat cyclone in 1998, the tsunami in 2004 and North India floods in 2013. The IAF also provides assistance to other countries during relief activities such as Operation Rainbow in Sri Lanka. History, formation and early pilots. The Indian Air Force was established in British India as an auxiliary air force of the Royal Air Force with the enactment of the Indian Air Force Act 1932 on 8 October that year, and adopted the Royal Air Force uniforms, badges, brevets and insignia. On 1 April 1933, the IAF commissioned its first squadron, No. 1 Squadron, with 4 Westland Wapiti biplanes and 5 Indian pilots. The Indian pilots were led by RAF Commanding Officer Flight Lieutenant Cecil Bouchier. World War II. During World War II, the IAF played an instrumental role in blocking the advance of the Japanese army in Burma, where its first air strike strike was on the Japanese military base in Arakan. It also carried out strike missions against the Japanese air bases at Mae Hong Son, Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai in northern Thailand. The IAF was mainly involved in strike close air support, aerial reconnaissance, bomber escort and pathfinding missions for RAF and USAAF heavy bombers. RAF pilots were embedded in IAF units and vice versa to gain combat experience. IAF pilots participated in air operations in Europe as part of the RAF. During the war, the IAF went through a phase of steady expansion. New aircraft, including the US-built Volchave engines, Douglas DC-3 and the British Hawker Hurricane, Supermarine Spitfire and Westland Lysander, were added to its fleet. In recognition of the services rendered by the IAF, King George VI conferred the prefix Royal in 1945. Thereafter the IAF was referred to as the Royal Indian Air Force. In 1950, when India became a republic, the prefix was dropped and it reverted to being the Indian Air Force. First years of independence after it became independent from the British Empire in 1947. British India was partitioned into the new states of the Dominion of India and the Dominion of Pakistan. Along the lines of the geographical partition, the assets of the Air Force were divided between the new countries. India's Air Force retained the name of the Royal Indian Air Force, but 3 of the 10 operational squadrons and facilities, located within the borders of Pakistan, were transferred to the Royal Pakistan Air Force. The RAF roundel was changed to an interim chakra roundel derived from the Ashoka chakra. Around the same time, conflict broke out between them over the control of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir. With Pakistani forces moving into the state, its Maharaja decided to accede to India in order to receive military help. The day after the instrument of accession was signed, the RAF was called upon to transport troops into the war zone, and this was when a good management of logistics came into help. This led to the eruption of full-scale war between India and Pakistan, though there was no formal declaration of war. During the war, the RAF did not engage the Pakistan Air Force in air-to-air combat. However, it did provide effective transport and close air support to the Indian troops. When India became a republic in 1950, the prefix Royal was dropped from the Indian Air Force. At the same time, the current IAF roundel was adopted. Congo crisis and liberation of Goa. The IAF saw significant conflict in 1960, when Belgium's 75-year rule over Congo ended abruptly, engulfing the nation in widespread violence and rebellion. The IAF activated No. 5 Squadron, equipped with English Electric Canberra, to support the United Nations operation in the Congo. The squadron started undertaking operational missions in November. The unit remained there until 1966, when the UN mission ended. Operating from Leopoldville and Kamina, the Canberras soon destroyed the rebel air force and provided the UN ground forces with its only long-range air support force. In late 1961, the Indian government decided to liberate the Portuguese colony of Goa after years of disagreement between New Delhi and Lisbon. The Indian Air Force was requested to provide support elements to the ground force in what was called Operation VJ. Probing flights by some fighters and bombers were carried out from 8 to 18 December to draw out the Portuguese Air Force, but to no avail. On the 18th of December, 2 waves of Canberra bombers bombed the runway of Dabalim Airfield, taking care not to bomb the terminals and the ATC tower. 2 Portuguese transport aircraft found on the airfield were left alone so that they could be captured intact. However, the Portuguese pilots managed to take off the aircraft from the still damaged airfield and made the getaway to Portugal. Hunters attacked the wireless station at Bambolim. Vampires were used to provide air support to the ground forces. Indamine musketeers were used to strike Portuguese gun positions. Uragans bombed the runways at Diu and destroyed the control tower, wireless station and the meteorological station. After the Portuguese surrendered, the former colony was integrated into India. Border disputes and changes in the IF in 1962. Border disagreements between China and India escalated to a war when China mobilized its troops across the Indian border. During the Sino-Indian War, India's military planners failed to deploy and effectively use the IAF against the invading Chinese forces. This resulted in India losing a significant amount of advantage to the Chinese, especially in Jammu and Kashmir. 3 years after the Sino-Indian conflict, in 1965, Pakistan launched Operation Gibraltar, strategy of Pakistan to infiltrate Jammu and Kashmir, and start a rebellion against Indian rule. This came to be known as the Second Kashmir War. This was the first time the IAF actively engaged an enemy air force. However, instead of providing close air support to the Indian Army, the IAF carried out independent raids against PAF bases. These bases were situated deep inside Pakistani territory, making IAF fighters vulnerable to anti-aircraft fire. During the course of the conflict, the PAF enjoyed technological superiority over the IAF and had achieved substantial strategic and tactical advantage due to the sudden attack and wholehearted diplomatic and military support from the US and Britain. The IAF was restrained by the government from retaliating to PAF attacks in the eastern sector, while a substantive part of its combat force was deployed there and could not be transferred to the western sector, against the possibility of Chinese intervention. Moreover, international stipulations and norms did not permit a military force to be introduced into the Indian state of J&K beyond what was agreed during the 1949 ceasefire. Despite this, the IAF was able to prevent the PAF from gaining air superiority over conflict zones. The small and nimble IAF Fallen Gnats proved effective against the F-86 Sabres of the PAF, earning it the nickname Sabre Slayers. By the time the conflict had ended, the IAF lost 60 to 70 aircraft, while the PAF lost 43 aircraft. More than 60% of IAF's aircraft losses took place in ground attack missions to enemy ground fire, since fighter-bomber aircraft would carry out repeated dive attacks on the same target. According to Air Chief Marshal Arjun Singh of the Indian Air Force, despite being qualitative inferior, IAF achieved air superiority in 3 days in the 1965 war. After the 1965 war, the IAF underwent a series of changes to improve its capabilities. In 1966, the Para-Commandos Regiment was created, to increase its logistics, supply and rescue operations ability. The IAF inducted 72 HS-748s which were built by Hindustan Aeronautics Limited under license from Avro. India started to put more stress on indigenous manufacture of fighter aircraft. As a result, HAL HF-24 Marut, designed by the famed German aerospace engineer Kurt Tank, were inducted into the Air Force. HAL also started developing an improved version of the Fallen Gnat, known as HAL Ajit. At the same time, the IAF also started inducting Mach 2 capable Soviet MiG-21 and Sukhoi Su-7 fighters. Bangladesh Liberation War. By late 1971, the intensification of the independence movement in erstwhile East Pakistan led to the Bangladesh Liberation War between India and Pakistan. On the 22nd of November 1971, 10 days before the start of a full-scale war, 4 PAF F-86 Sabre jets attacked Indian and Mukti Bahini positions at Garabpur, near the international border. 2 of the 4 PAF Sabres were shot down and 1 damaged by the IF's fallen Gnats. On the 3rd of December, India formally declared war against Pakistan following massive preemptive strikes by the PAF against Indian Air Force installations in Srinagar, Ambala, Sirsa, Halwara and Jodhpur. However, the IF did not suffer significantly because the leadership had anticipated such a move and precautions were taken. The Indian Air Force was quick to respond to Pakistani airstrikes, following which the PAF carried out mostly defensive sorties. Within the first 2 weeks, the IAF had carried out almost 12,000 sorties over East Pakistan and also provided close air support to the advancing Indian Army. IAF also assisted the Indian Navy in its operations against the Pakistani Navy and Maritime Security Agency in the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. On the Western Front, the IAF destroyed more than 20 Pakistani tanks, 4 APCs and a supply train during the Battle of Lunchwala. The IAF undertook strategic bombing of West Pakistan by carrying out raids on oil installations in Karachi, the Mangla Dam and a gas plant in Sindh. Similar strategy was also deployed in East Pakistan, and as the IAF achieved complete air superiority on the Eastern Front, the ordnance factories, runways, and other vital areas of East Pakistan were severely damaged. By the time Pakistani forces surrendered, the IAF destroyed 94 PAF aircraft. The IAF was able to conduct a wide range of missions: troop support, air combat, deep penetration strikes, paradropping behind enemy lines, feints to draw enemy fighters away from the actual target, bombing, and reconnaissance. In contrast, the Pakistan Air Force, which was solely focused on air combat, was blown out of the subcontinent's skies within the first week of the war. Those PAF aircraft that survived took refuge at Iranian air bases or in concrete bunkers, refusing to offer a fight. Hostilities officially ended at 14:30 GMT on the 17th of December, after the fall of Dhaka on the 15th of December. India claimed large gains of territory in West Pakistan, and the independence of Pakistan's east wing as Bangladesh was confirmed. The IAF had flown over 16,000 sorties on both east and west fronts, including sorties by transport aircraft and helicopters, while the PAF flew about 30 and 2,840. More than 80% of the IAF's sorties were close support and interdiction, and according to neutral assessments about 45 IAF aircraft were lost, while Pakistan lost 75 aircraft, not including any F-6S Mirage IIs, or the 6 Jordanian F-104s which failed to return to the donors. But the imbalance in air losses was explained by the IAF's considerably higher sortie rate, and its emphasis on ground attack missions. On the ground, Pakistan suffered most, with 9,000 killed and 25,000 wounded, while India lost 3,000 dead and 12,000 wounded. The loss of armored vehicles was similarly imbalanced. This represented a major defeat for Pakistan. Towards the end of the war, IAF's transport planes dropped leaflets over Dhaka urging the Pakistani forces to surrender, demoralizing Pakistani troops in East Pakistan. Incidents before Kargil. In 1984, India launched Operation Meghdoot to capture the Siachen Glacier in the contested Kashmir region. In Op Meghdoot, IAF's Mi-8 Jetijones Cheetah helicopters airlifted hundreds of Indian troops to Siachen. Launched on the 13th of April 1984, this military operation was unique because of Siachen's inhospitable terrain and climate. The military action was successful, given the fact that under a previous agreement, neither Pakistan nor India had stationed any personnel in the area. With India's successful Operation Meghdoot, it gained control of the Siachen Glacier. India has established control over all of the 70 kilometers long Siachen Glacier and all of its tributary glaciers, as well as the three main passes of the Saltoro Ridge immediately west of the glacier, Sierla, Bilafondla and Jongla. Pakistan controls the glacial valleys immediately west of the Saltoro Ridge. According to Time magazine, India gained more than 1,000 square miles of territory because of its military operations in Siachen, following the inability to negotiate an end to the Sri Lankan civil war, and to provide humanitarian aid through an unarmed convoy of ships. The Indian government decided to carry out an airdrop of the humanitarian supplies on the evening of the 4th of June 1987, designated Operation Pumalai or Eagle Mission 4. 5 and 32s escorted by 4 Mirage 2000 of 7 Squadron AF. The battle axes carried out the supply drop which faced no opposition from the Sri Lankan armed forces. Another Mirage 2000 orbited 150 kilometers away, acting as an airborne relay of messages to the entire fleet since they would be outside radio range once they descended to low levels. The Mirage 2000 escort formation was led by WGCDR Ajit Bhavnani, with Squadron LDRS Bakshi, Namoitra and JS Panasar as his team members and Squadron LDR KG Bawar as the relay pilot. Sri Lanka accused India of blatant violation of sovereignty. India insisted that it was acting only on humanitarian grounds. In 1987, the IAF supported the Indian peacekeeping force in northern and eastern Sri Lanka in Operation Puan. About 70,000 sorties were flown by the IAF's transport and helicopter force in support of nearly 100,000 troops and paramilitary forces without a single aircraft lost or mission aborted. IAF and 32s maintained a continuous airlink between airbases in South India and northern Sri Lanka, transporting men, equipment, rations and evacuating casualties. MIATS supported the ground forces and also provided air transportation to the Sri Lankan civil administration during the elections. Mi-25s of No. 125 helicopter unit were utilized to provide suppressive fire against militant strongpoints and to interdict coastal and clandestine riverine traffic. On the night of the 3rd of November 1988, the Indian Air Force mounted special operations to airlift a parachute battalion group from Agra, non-stop over 2,000 kilometers to the remote Indian Ocean archipelago of the Maldives in response to Maldivian President Gayoom's request for military help against a mercenary invasion in Operation Cactus. The Il-76s of No. 44 Squadron landed at Hulul at 0030 hours and the Indian paratroopers secured the airfield and restored government rule at Mail within hours. 4 Mirage 2000 aircraft of 7 Squadron, led by WGCDRAV Doc Vaidya, carried out a show of force early that morning, making low-level passes over the islands. Kargil War. On the 11th of May 1999, the Indian Air Force was called in to provide close air support to the Indian Army at the height of the ongoing Kargil conflict with the use of helicopters. The IAF strike was code-named Operation Safe Sagar. The first strikes were launched on the 26th of May, when the Indian Air Force struck infiltrator positions with fighter aircraft and helicopter gunships. The initial strikes saw MiG-27s carrying out offensive sorties, with MiG-21s and later MiG-29s providing fighter cover. The IAF also deployed its radars and the MiG-29 MiG-29 fighters in vast numbers to keep check on Pakistani military movements across the border. Srinagar Airport was at this time closed to civilian air traffic and dedicated to the Indian Air Force. On the 27th of May, the Indian Air Force suffered its first fatality when it lost a MiG-21 and a MiG-27 in quick succession. The following day, while on an offensive sortie, a Mi-17 was shot down by 3 Stinger missiles and lost its entire crew of 4. Following these losses, the IAF immediately withdrew helicopters from offensive roles as a measure against the threat of man-portable air defense systems. On the 30th of May, the Mirage 2000s were introduced in offensive capability, as they were deemed better in performance under the high-altitude conditions of the conflict zone. Mirage 2000s were not only better equipped to counter the MANPAD threat compared to the MiGs, but also gave IAF the ability to carry out aerial raids at night. The MiG-29s were used extensively to provide fighter escort to the Mirage 2000. Radar transmissions of Pakistani F-16s were picked up repeatedly, but these aircraft stayed away. The Mirages successfully targeted enemy camps and logistic bases in Kargil and severely disrupted the supply lines. Mirage 2000s were used for strikes on Mundodalo and the heavily defended Tiger Hill and paved the way for their early recapture. At the height of the conflict, the IAF was conducting over 40 sorties daily over the Kargil region. By the 26th of July, the Indian forces had successfully repulsed the Pakistani forces from Kargil. Post-Kargil incidents on the 10th of August 1999, IAF MiG-21s intercepted a Pakistan Navy Breguet Atlantique which was flying over Sikrik, an Indian territory. The aircraft was shot down, killing all 16 Pakistani Navy personnel on board. India claimed that the Atlantic was on a mission to gather information on IAF air defense, a charge emphatically rejected by Pakistan, which argued that the unarmed aircraft was on a training mission. Since the late 1990s, the Indian Air Force has been modernizing its fleet to counter challenges in the new century. The fleet size of the IAF has decreased to 33 squadrons during this period because of the retirement of older aircraft. Still, India maintains the 4th largest air force in the world. The IAF plans to raise its strength to 42 squadrons. Self-reliance is the main aim that is being pursued by the defense research and manufacturing agencies. On the 20th of August 2013, the Indian Air Force created a world record by performing the highest landing of a C-130J at the Daulah Begoldi airstrip in Ladakh at the height of 16,614 feet. The medium-lift aircraft will be used to deliver troops, supplies and improve communication networks. The aircraft belonged to the Veiled Vipers squadron based at Hindon Air Force Station. On the 13th of July 2014, 2 MiG-21s were sent from Jodhpur Air Base to investigate a Turkish Airlines plane over Jaisalmer when it repeated an identification code provided by another commercial passenger plane that had already entered Indian airspace before it. The flights were on the way to Mumbai and Delhi. Planes were later allowed to proceed after the credentials were verified. On the 25th of July 2014, an advanced landing chopper 307 crashed in a field of Siddipur in Uttar Pradesh, on its way to Allahabad from Bareilly. At least 7 people were killed after the incident took place. On the 28th of March 2014, C-130J30KC-3803 crashed near Gwalior, India, killing all 5 personnel aboard. The aircraft was conducting low-level penetration training by flying at around 300 feet when it ran into wake turbulence from another aircraft in the formation, which caused it to crash. On the 2nd of January 2016, the Pathankot Air Force Station was attacked by terrorists, resulting in 7 casualties.